Hello team, welcome to another ATP Geopolitics video with myself, Jonathan M.S. Pearce. My feeds are alight at the moment with clips of an interview and quotes from an interview between Dasha Burns, a Politico correspondent who emigrated from Ukraine at the age of 8, actually, born in 1992. She is an interesting person to interview Donald Trump. This interview, a Politico interview, that's who Dasha Burns works for, called The Conversation, has just been recorded, and it's about 45 minutes long. We're going to look at sort of the first 20 minutes where Dasha Burns talks about or asks questions about Ukraine and Russia in particular, and Europe at large. And it's fascinating. It's enraging. I will not be doing my usual getting super angry, but just imagine that I say everything I say is fairly angry. Imagine I'm just absolutely at wit's end, because essentially I am. It's an interesting interview for a number of reasons. I actually think watching it back, initially I started watching clips and looking at these quoted excerpts and thinking, damn it, Trump, you are just the complete enemy of Ukraine. I haven't particularly changed that position, actually. I think that he really is, he really has changed positions. Has he changed? We can talk about whether actually he's just really much more solidly adopting his default position of being pro-Russian or not. But his position on Ukraine, I think, has flip-flopped at times. But now he's really doubling down on support, I think, for Russia. He's advocating for Russia, and he's being anti-European. And there are elements of what he says here that if you take them completely out of the interview context, you are just raging at Trump for saying. But some of the questions are really leading. Dasha Burns here asks questions in a way that initially I was like, that is really bad journalism. These are such leading questions. Well, so then the question is she trying to entrap him? Is she asking really nice questions in a nice way, real softball questions for him, to lead him into saying things that in the end are really controversial? Or does she kind of believe these things herself? And, what is going on in her head with the way that she approaches these questions? Hopefully that will become apparent when we see this. Look, we're going to get into it now because I don't want this to go on too long. But if you haven't already, please remember to like, subscribe and share. It really helps out with the channel and hopefully keeps you in the loop. Okay, let's go to Dasha Burns and a Politico The Conversation interview with President Donald Trump. Okay, here we are. Let's go for it.
One of the most pressing issues in Europe right now is the war between Russia and Ukraine. Your team has been going back and forth.
I wouldn't say one. I would say the most.
The most. You're right. Your team has been going back and forth between Putin and Zelenskyy with various drafts of a peace deal. Which country right now is in the stronger negotiating position?
Well, there can be no question about it. It's Russia. It's a much bigger country. It's a war that should have never happened. Frankly, it wouldn't have happened if I were president, and it didn't happen for 4 years. I watched that.
Okay. And I'm going to stop this, and I'm going to stop it quite frequently. And if you don't like me doing that, I'm not quite sure why you're watching, because otherwise, if you want to watch this whole without anyone giving their commentary or opinions, go and watch this on the Politico YouTube channel. Like, the only reason I will be showing you this is so that I can give you my opinion on it. She starts here with a question that is, who is in the stronger negotiating position? Now, if I was interviewing Trump, I would never want to ask him that, because it is a leading question to get him to just say something that ends up not helping actually negotiations as a whole. The answer here gives ammunition to the Russians and to pro-Russian advocates in the American government not to help Ukraine. This is giving permission to go harder at Ukraine. You guys are losing. You guys are in a weaker position. So therefore you need to accept everything that comes your way. Like, as I said on my previous video about this answer, I would have answered this because I'm pro-Ukrainian, saying something like, well, actually, with the assistance of the United States and Europe together, we can bring Russia to the negotiating table, whereby Ukraine has a lot of cards to play because Russia's economy will be in tatters. It is our job to support freedom and democracy around the world, or at least if it's not our job, it's our desire. And it is incumbent upon us to put as much pressure on Russia, economically speaking, while providing weaponry for Ukraine to defend themselves, so that the best outcome for Ukraine and for the United States is brought about. That's how I'd answer that question. He goes, Russia's much bigger. It's in the commanding position. Ukraine are going to lose, type thing. But that's he's able to say that, or he's almost forced to say that because of the question and the way in which it is asked. So I won't do this too much, but I'm going to go back.
Taking place, and I said, wow, they're much bigger.
Peace deal. Which country right now is in the stronger negotiating position?
Well, there can be no question about it. It's Russia. It's a much bigger country. It's a war that should have never happened. Frankly, It wouldn't have happened if I were president, and it didn't happen for 4 years.
One more thing, it did happen for 4 years. He said it didn't happen for 4 years. From 2016 to 2020, that war was taking place. It's taken place since 2014. He even talks about it later in terms of Crimea. That's when it all started. Yeah. And it's still going on. And they didn't take 4 years off. It's just empirically wrong there.
I watched that taking place, and I said, wow, they're going to cause some problems here. And it started, and it could have evolved into World War III, frankly. I think it's probably not going to be happening now. I think if I weren't president, you could have had World War III. I think you would have had a much bigger problem than you have right now. But
essentially, by the way, the translation of that is you have to capitulate, otherwise you get World War III. You have to bow down to the stronger force at all times. His entire approach is to appease the bully. I mean, he sees himself most certainly as a bully anyway. So this is what he would want to come about if he was bullying someone else. He would want them to capitulate and genuflect in front of him. That's what he is seeing should have been the right option from Zelenskyy. We've heard this many times before. He said he made the wrong choices. He did the wrong thing, Zelenskyy, blah, blah, blah. So what do you expect him to have done? Like, the only other option is to give up and surrender completely to Russia. And that's really what Donald Trump thinks should have happened.
Right now, it's a big problem. It's a big problem for Europe, and they're not handling it well.
Europe are not handling it well by supporting Ukraine, by providing weaponry and financing for Ukraine. Again, it's the same argument. Europe should have allowed Russia to steamroll over Ukraine. All Donald Trump is doing, I think, in this interview is without too overtly saying it, he's basically advocating, one, for Russia, and two, for strong men in the world to be able to do what they want to weaker nations.
Last night, you said that you weren't sure if President Zelenskyy was fine with the most recent proposal, that he isn't ready. I was hearing from your advisors around Thanksgiving that they thought this thing might be wrapped up by the end of the holiday, but it's still not done. Is Zelenskyy responsible for the stalled progress, or what's going on there?
Well, he's got to read the proposal. He hadn't he hasn't read it yet.
The most recent draft.
That's as of yesterday. And maybe he's read it over the night. It would be nice if he would read it. You know, a lot of people are dying, so it would be really good if he'd read it. His people loved the proposal. They really liked it. His lieutenants, his top people, they liked it. But they said he hasn't read it yet. I think he should find time to read it.
Okay, the reason given for not reading it is because he didn't want to take the telephone call discussing this, because so many telephone calls have been wiretapped. In fact, Budanov on the same day was asked about wiretapping Russian dignitaries, and he said that's what we get paid for. The Ushakov, Witkov calls were tapped and released. So he was like, I don't want to discuss this over the phone. I need to see you in person to discuss exactly what went on in these meetings. Trump then has a go at him for so doing. Trump, famous for not reading anything. I mean, goodness me, that's a pot calling the kettle black. Outrageous. Mr. Non-reader himself, apparently not even read his own book that was ghostwritten. Anyway, yeah.
Is it time for Ukraine to hold an election, do you think?
Again, another, I think, pretty leading question. These are fairly controversial questions. He's always going to say yes. But this is a really nuanced discussion, and you need a ceasefire first to hold an election. I'm sorry, but you do. The UK, we didn't have an election for 9 years during World War II, that World War II period, because of World War II, and we weren't even invaded. But he doesn't call Winston Churchill a dictator. No one criticizes Churchill for that.
Yeah, I think so. It's been a long time. It hasn't been doing particularly well. Yeah, I think it's time. I think it's an important time to hold an election. You know, they're using war not to hold an election, but
they are using war not to hold an election. That is an outrageous claim. He just slips it in there, and he just, yeah. The thing is, you then take that on, and it becomes subliminally part of your, you know, if you're not critical of what Trump is saying here, it then becomes part of your sort of rationale going forwards. That, oh yeah, no, I heard, yeah, they're using that war so that they don't have to have elections. This is essentially, he's saying Zelenskyy is a dictator and he wants to stay in power, and so he's keeping Ukraine at war only so they can stay in power. Essentially, it's an outrageous claim. Zelensky's exhausted. I can bet your bottom dollar he does not want to be leading the country anymore. Right, that man needs a break. But you don't sell your country down the river. This honestly is outrageous.
I would think the Ukrainian people would, you know, should have that choice, and maybe Zelenskyy would win. I don't know who would win, but they haven't had an election in a long time. You know, they talk about a democracy, but it gets to a point where it's not a democracy anymore.
Which is why the war needs to come to an end, but a just end, not a quick end.
On Sunday, your son, Donald Trump Jr., responded to a reporter's question about whether you will, quote, walk away from Ukraine. And your son said, I think he may.
I played you a clip of Donald Trump Jr. in Doha, and it was an outrageous set of claims that was completely unacceptable, but, you know, typical for that Muppets.
Is that correct?
No, it's not correct, but it's not exactly wrong. We have to, you know, they have to play ball if they don't read agreements, potential agreements. You know, it's not easy with Russia because Russia has the upper hand, and they always did. They're much bigger, they're much stronger in that sense. I give Ukraine a lot of. I give the people of Ukraine and the military of Ukraine tremendous credit for the, you know, bravery and for the fighting and all of that.
But not Zelenskyy, even though he was the one that spearheaded that. Like, he could have ordered them to roll over. He could have fled the country, but he stayed and fought. You know, politically, he stayed on behalf of his country. But no, Trump cannot give Zelenskyy any kudos. But,
you know, at some point, size will win generally. And this is a massive size. You take a look at the numbers. I mean, the numbers are just crazy. This is not a war that should have happened. This is a...
And he sort of messes around here a bit, or it's all just a cognitive mess, I guess. But really what his position is, and it always has been, is that the bigger your country is, the more likely you are to win. Well, yeah, I guess, like, intuitively, that seems pretty reasonable. But actually, we've got other entities to consider here, like the EU, like allies, like NATO, like the US. And, you know, you could say, well, Kuwait was always going to lose. You might as well just let Kuwait lose. No, when Gulf War I, Kuwait effectively prevailed, right? Because there were loads of allies that came in, obviously that came in kinetically there. But you get the point, is that it's not just Russia against Ukraine. It is Russia against Ukraine and her allies. You know, to use my overtrodden analogies, if you see someone getting beaten up, a child getting beaten up by an adult, you don't just sit there and say, well, you're the smaller person here, so you're gonna lose. You're gonna lose because you're a child and he's a big 6-foot bugger. Or you get your mates together and say, that big 6-foot man is beating up that child. Let's go and defend that child and take out the man. And so it's this approach of, it's a real defeatist approach that Trump has, which is the bully should always win because it's bigger and better and stronger. And so we always let the bully win. Well, that's a horrible world. That is a horrible world that you are advocating for.
A war that would have never happened if I were president.
Don't
So
say
sad.
that.
Millions of people are dead. Many, many soldiers. You know, last month they lost 20.
The war is happening. You are president, and it's intensified. Putin has actually gone harder since you have become president. The amount of Shahed and missile attacks has gone through the roof.
7,000
It's gone through people's roofs.
soldiers and some people from missiles being launched into Kiev and other places. But what a sad thing for humanity. You know, this doesn't affect us. Our country is no longer paying any money. It was just Biden gave him $350 billion so stupidly. And, you know, if he wouldn't have given it, maybe something else would have happened. But Putin has had no respect for Biden.
And by the way, 350 billion is an incorrect number. Again, he keeps repeating it. So it's just lies. Like half of what he says is disinformation.
And he had no respect for Zelenskyy, didn't like Zelenskyy. They really hate each other. And part of the problem is they hate each other really a lot, you know? And it's...
Well, yeah. But you appear to be blaming Zelenskyy for hating Putin. Putin invaded his country. There's absolutely no recognition that Russia, the bad guys, that Putin is the aggressor, that Putin illegally invaded another sovereign nation. There's never that admission there from Trump. It's a glaring admission. It's absolutely outrageous.
It's very hard for them to try and make a deal. It's harder than most. I settled 8 wars.
No, you didn't.
And this, I would have said, this is the 9th. This would have been the easiest one, I would have said, or one of the easier ones. I mean, I settled one that was going on for 36 years. I settled Pakistan and India. I settled so many wars.
No, you didn't. Right. There is a great little clip here. I'm not going to play it to you, but it's CNN fact checking that and looking at these 8 wars that he claims he has solved. And by the way, Cambodia and Thailand, is it 500,000 people have just had to move because that sparked off again? I think there was another bomb in Rwanda yesterday. Was there not? Ethiopia and Egypt is in a war. Armenia and Azerbaijan, that was Turkey that did that, and they just came and signed it in the White House. And there was involvement with the US, but again, you know, to take responsibility for you know, Israel and Hamas, that's not over. It's just, anyway, you can go and watch the CNN clip where they go to town on those claims.
I'm very proud of it, and I do it pretty routinely, pretty easily. It's not hard for me to do. It's what
I just settle wars, just really routinely. It's that easy. It's just walk into a room, settle a war, just like that.
I make deals. This one is tough. One of the reasons is the level of hatred between Putin and Zelenskyy is tremendous.
And you're right, you're not spending money, but you are spending your time and your energy on this.
I want to stop saving, you know, I want to stop seeing people killed.
If this deal, if Zelenskyy rejects this deal,
Yeah.
I don't like the way, as I said, that she phrases these questions. If Zelenskyy refuses this deal, the way she says that there is too simplistic. Like, the question should be, if it turns out that giving away sovereign territory to Russia, as demanded by a peace negotiation mediated by yourselves and Russia, or mediated by yourselves between Russia and Ukraine, if Zelenskyy is unable to give that land away, it's a red line he can't cross, then not. If he refuses to sign a deal, like, what are you going to do then? I just really don't like the way that she phrases her questions. And then it gets onto this idea, is she doing that so that it invites Trump in to say something controversial, some kind of entrapment? You know, is this a very purposeful approach by Dasha Burns here?
You know, want to stop seeing people killed.
If this deal, if Zelensky rejects this deal, like, is there a timeline? Is there a point at which you say, okay?
Well, he's going to have to get on the ball and start accepting things. You know, when you're losing, because you're losing. Do
you think Ukraine has lost?
He's losing. You're going to have to accept deals. If you're losing, if you're 1-0 down in a football match, just give up. You're losing. That's it. You can't win. It's game over. World War I, World War II, 1939, 1940. Everyone's losing. Give up. Let the Nazis win. That's what you do. Just give up. Nobody help. You can't help something. You're hey, little kid being beaten up by a 6-foot man. You're losing. Give up. I'm not helping, but you're losing. I don't help people. I am neutral. Or another way of putting it is, I am a complete bastard.
This war?
Well, they've lost territory long before I got here. They lost a whole strip of seafront, big seafront.
Watch out for the "I'm going to build hotels in Crimea" approach to the interview.
I mean, you look at the maps. I've been here for 10 months, but you go back 10 months and take a look. They lost that whole strip. It's now a bigger strip. It's a wider strip, but they lost a lot of land, and it's very good land, too, that they lost. You certainly wouldn't say it's a victory. I could show you a chart. It's a lot of land they lost.
It's a lot of land. I think
think of it. If our election wasn't rigged, it was a rigged election. Now everyone knows.
Lie.
So it's going to come out over the next couple of months too loud.
No, it won't.
Loud and clear, because we have all the information there. But if the election wasn't rigged and stolen, you wouldn't even be talking about Ukraine right now.
The resounding consensus in Europe right now is that they want to keep supporting Ukraine until they can win this war.
Until they drop, yeah.
Well, is that realistic in your view?
I mean, look, then they should support it. Europe I'm friendly with all of them. I mean, I like all of them. I have no real enemy. I've had a couple that I didn't like over the years. I actually like the current crew. I like them a lot. But and I know them very well. I know them really well. Some are friends, some are okay. I know the good leaders. I know the bad leaders. I know the smart ones. I know the stupid ones. You got some real stupid ones too. But they're not doing a good job. Europe is not doing a good job in many ways. They're not doing a good job.
I want to ask
They
you
talk
about
too
that.
much, and they're not producing. We're talking about Ukraine.
They talk too much and they're not producing. I mean, they're assisting Ukraine more than the United States. They are they've put 20 rounds of sanctions, or they're just about to put their 20th round of sanctions on Russia. They are consistently aiding Ukraine in their kinetic warfare, as is the US in terms of intelligence and that kind of assistance. But they aren't doing nothing. And in fact, you are stopping Europe being more effective by allowing exemptions for Hungary and Slovakia in terms of Lukoil and Rosneft sanctions.
They talk, but they don't produce. And the war just keeps going on and on.
Now, I will concede that actually I think, but I also think this is the United States, that Europe should have a no-fly zone over Western Ukraine and should have troops inside Ukraine helping with logistics and protection and air defense of key infrastructure there, not involved on the front lines, but you've got North Koreans in Kursk and no one appears to bat an eyelid. I've never heard Donald Trump say anything about North Koreans getting involved in the war, in the European war.
I mean, 4 years now it's been going on, long before I got here. This is not my war. This is Joe Biden's war. And in terms of America.
No, it's not. It's in terms of America. It's Vladimir Putin's war. And I'd really like to hear you say that more often. But you don't, because you like a bit of Vlad.
It's a very sad thing. And the only reason I really care about it is because I hate to see young, beautiful people being killed. That's largely why I got involved. I mean,
unless they're on boats in the Caribbean, in which case, kill them all.
If you look at the Congo and Rwanda, that's been going on. 14 million people at least killed. Nobody has any idea how many, but killed. Machetes, a lot of machete killings. Vicious.
14 million people killed in Congo and Rwanda. I'm going to check that one out. Just from a quick search, millions. I think 6 million people died as a result of the first and second Congo wars, mainly as a result of disease and starvation, not from kinetic warfare itself. But yeah, nonetheless, I'm not sure 14 million, but maybe, I don't know. It seems pretty high for me, that number.
Yes, but if you look at the wars, and some of the wars that really were going to be millions and millions of people. The Prime Minister of Pakistan said, I saved millions of people by getting involved with the, stopping India and Pakistan from fighting.
I do want to go back to Europe for a moment, though, because you said they're not doing a lot of things right in your view. And just
they can't be doing right, because look what's happened.
Well, your administration just released a new national security strategy that sent shockwaves throughout Europe. The strategy says a key pillar of American foreign policy should be, quote, cultivating resistance to Europe's current trajectory within European nations. How much should European leaders prepare for your administration to push to reshape the continent's politics?
Well, Europe is a different place.
What do you mean by that?
And if it keeps going the way it's going, Europe will not be, in my opinion, many of those countries will not be viable countries any longer. Their immigration policy is a disaster. What they're doing with immigration is a disaster.
There's a lot of people talking about how Stephen Miller is behind everything that Donald Trump does. And even actually, and Antti Scaramucci and Kati Kay was saying this the other day, that on the Rest is Politics US, that actually Stephen Miller, that national security strategy document would have had to have passed Stephen Miller's desk, and it's got his fingerprints all over it. And the approach to foreign policy and approach to military policy around the world appears to be very much a Stephen Miller approach, a kind of quasi-isolationist or imperialist, very right-wing Christian nationalist approach to, or certainly white nationalist approach to politics. And this is what is coming through, I think, what Donald Trump is saying here.
Disaster. We had a disaster coming, but I was able to stop it. We have no people coming through our borders now. 0, 7 months. I mean, who would believe 0? We went from millions of people, in some cases, millions of people a month, but millions of people to no people.
That's not what Europe looks like.
The opposite. Yeah, I know Europe, they're coming in from all parts of the world, not just the Middle East.
And it's interesting that it's not what Europe looks like, which is what you would say, Dasha Burns, if you were really on side with Trump. So I think maybe this is, purposeful. So she's trying to get really on side with Trump, so he's just comfortable. It's not an abrasive interview. I'm just totally agreeing with everything you say, so that you can give me everything that's in your head. Just offload it to me.
They're coming in from the Congo. Tremendous numbers of people coming from the Congo, and even worse, they're coming from prisons of the Congo and many other countries. And for some reason, they want to be politically correct, which actually I think is the opposite of politically correct. But they want to be politically correct, and they don't want to send them back to where they came from. And Europe is, if you take a look at Paris, it's a much different place. I loved Paris. It's a much different place than it was. If you take a look at London, you have a mayor named Khan. He's a horrible mayor. He's an incompetent mayor, but he's a horrible, vicious, disgusting mayor. I think he's done a terrible job. London's a different place. I love London.
London has just been voted the best place to live in the world. Again. Just sort of throw that in there. So
I love London. And I hate to see it happen. My roots are in Europe, as you know.
Right.
And I hate to see that happen. This is one of the great places in the world, and they're allowing people just to come in and unchecked, unvetted.
So how involved are you going to get? I mean, could we see you getting involved in European elections,
I want to run the United
example?
States. I don't want to run Europe.
that's a good question. How much are you trying to get involved? Are you interfering with the EU, with European sovereign nations? He talks about endorsing people, which is itself fairly controversial. Usually you don't get American presidents endorsing particularly in other democratic nations like the EU, like inside Europe. You don't generally get American presidents fully endorsing one candidate over another, but Trump has no problem doing that.
Involved in Europe very much.
Might you endorse
NATO
candidates?
calls me daddy. I mean, I have a lot to say about it. Look, I raised, the GDP from 2% to 5%. The 2% they weren't paying and the 5% they...
You're not raising GDP. It'd be nice if you did raise British GDP from 2% to 5%, whatever that would mean. But yeah, you're raising expenditure as a percentage of GDP on defenses in those countries. Of course, that was the war in Ukraine that's really kick-started that. But I know that Trump has been involved there, and that's previously been a bugbear of his, and rightfully so, I think. And actually, Obama was responsible for starting that process with the 2% threshold back in 2014, I think it was.
They are paying. And they're paying it because when we send things over, NATO pays for it, and I assume they give it to Ukraine. But Europe is being destroyed.
Would you consider getting involved in some of those
Europe is being destroyed.
elections to put in leaders that you think are better suited?
Well, I didn't.
By the way, I mean, I could bore you with comparison of stats between Europe and the US in terms of education, in terms of safety, in terms of gun violence, in terms of welfare, in terms of global peace index. I think the US is 131st in the global peace index. He's going to slag off Sweden. Sweden's something like, I don't know, 13th or something. And he slags off Sweden a bunch of times. It's like, dude, take that big log out of your eye before you throw sticks at other people. Absolutely outrageous.
I've endorsed people, but I've endorsed people that a lot of Europeans don't like. I've endorsed Viktor Orban. I endorsed, go back to South America, Latin America, South America, Milei, Argentina. He was losing in the election, and I endorsed him, and he won in a landslide.
Yeah, with Viktor Orban, beyond endorsing, he recently said that you promised him access to U.S.-backed financial shield worth up to $20 billion. Is that right?
No, I didn't promise him, but he certainly asked for it. But
would you consider giving that to him?
I just think he's doing a very good job in a different sense on immigration. His country's landlocked. He's got a different kind of a country. He doesn't have the sea, so he can't have ships coming in with energy. He's got a big pipe coming in from Russia. They've had
It's not the only landlocked country in Europe, but it's all right. Let's let him off because Viktor Orban's my mate. So we'll give him an exemption.
For a long time. It's a different situation he's got.
So would you consider some financial assistance there?
He's really gotten right is the immigration, because he allows nobody in his country. And Poland has done a very good job in that respect too. But most European nations, they're decaying. They're decaying.
I want evidence for that, and I want you to compare those metrics to the United States. Please.
You can imagine some leaders in Europe are a little freaked out by what your posture is, and European.
No, they should be freaked out by what they're doing to their countries. They're destroying their countries.
Well, European Council
President. And they're people I like. Look, they're people I like. I get along with them. You know that. But they can't let this happen. And it gets to a point where you can't really correct it. There'll be a point, and it's very close to that point.
And what will that mean?
It will mean that...
What does it mean for you to correct European countries, sovereign countries?
They're no longer going to be strong nations.
Does that mean they won't be allies
Or
anymore?
they'll be, well, it depends, it depends. They'll change their ideology, obviously, because the people coming in have a totally different ideology. But it's going to make them much weaker. They'll be much weaker, and they'll be much different.
And what will that mean for our relationship
look at
with
your mayor
them?
of London. He's a disaster. He's a disaster. He's got a totally different ideology.
He absolutely hates Sadiq Khan. And how many times he mentioned him in this interview? It's ridiculous.
Of what he's supposed to have. And he gets elected because so many people have come in and they vote for him now because, it's one of those things. But I hate what's happened to London, and I hate what's happened to Paris. I hate when I see it.
Sir, it's sometimes hard to tell.
When do you see what goes on in London? When are you popping off to bloody, I don't know, Hackney or whatever? When are you down Borough Market? perusing the sausages. You ain't, mate. Shut up.
Well, when you say these things, do you intend to send kind of a message of tough love to our allies to push them to make reforms? Or do you think that many of them are just weak and you don't really want to be allies with them?
I think they're weak, but I also think that they want to be so politically correct. I think they don't know what to do. Europe doesn't know what to do.
It's just this anti-woke tirade, isn't it?
They don't know what to do on trade either. I mean, I look at a lot of the trade, situation that's going on over there. It's a little bit dangerous, but Europe.
He's something to always pay attention to with Donald Trump. And I said this to you before, is he always speaks in vaguenesses. He's very vague about what he says. And you can, if you're aligned with Trump, you can be left thinking, yeah, damn it, those weak Europeans, and yeah, they're rubbish at that, and yeah, of course, well, what's the US doing about that? He's talking about they're weak on trade. Well, the US manufacturing's just been going down every month since he's been in charge. You've got trade war with everyone. He's had to bail out his farmers to the tune of 12 billion, which they've complained isn't even enough because of his tariff wars. And he has the audacity to say this about Europe. But notice how vague everything he says is.
They don't know what to do on trade either. I mean, I look at a lot of the.
They don't know what to do on trade. What does that mean? Honestly, let's try and think about what he really means here.
They want to be so politically correct. I think they don't know what to do.
What does that mean?
Europe doesn't know
about
what to do.
About what?
They don't know what to do on trade either. I mean, I look at a lot of the.
In what way?
Trade.
What's wrong with the trade
situation that's going on over there?
Oh, I look at the trade situation that's going on over there. Word salad.
It's a little bit dangerous, but Europe.
It's a little bit dangerous. I look at the trade situation going on over there, and it's a little bit dangerous. What does that mean? He needs to be taken to task on literally every sentence that he says. Now, it would be a hellish interview. I mean, the reason why this is a smooth interview, because she hasn't challenged a single thing he said, just allowing him, just greasing the cogs here and allowing him to say what he wants. So, Politico would be happy. That's a very successful, non-combative interview. But if I was there, I'd love to be like, stop, right, what do you mean? That sentence you just said. And that sentence, what do you mean by that? And what do you mean by that?
Europe, they want to be politically correct, and it makes them weak. That's what makes them weak.
In what context?
It sounds like you want to see some pretty massive changes.
Well, I think they should get the people out that came into the country illegally.
They should get the people that came out into the country. Is the EU a country now? Are you talking about Europe? What? Okay. Illegal immigrants. What? Okay. Well, how much do you know that is or isn't happening? What's your understanding of the statistics of illegal migration? How different is Europe to the US? How many countries border Europe in a way that don't border the US? The US has got Mexico, and then it's got the sea to the Caribbean, and it's got Canada. And no one's going to come from the north unless they're Canadian. At the moment, Canadians don't like you, so you're going to get no immigration from up there. So as long as you shut the border down from Mexico, then actually that's pretty that's quite, scare quotes, easy. It's at least you're only looking at really one direction and maybe boat people from the Caribbean. Europe, you've got all over the shop. You've got a whole of the southern Mediterranean, all those different African nations, all the different routes through there. You've got the Balkans through that aren't part of the EU. You've got, Russia and Belarus are trying to send people through the borders there. You've got Russia trying to motivate people to go through the kind of Libyan corridor up through into Europe. And then you've got the Middle East, you've got Syria, you've got wars going on over there, you've got wars going on over there, you had the Arab Spring, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Europe is surrounded in a lot of ways. And even the sea out to the Atlantic, you've got an awful lot coming from up from Africa through like places like Ceuta and whatnot, and up through into kind of Spain. It is massively more complicated, and then you've got an awful lot of different countries where some countries have much more of an issue, such as Italy and Spain, than other countries will. So it's just, but of course, he can just speak in vaguenesses and get away with just slagging Europe off.
I want to ask about
You know,
NATO.
if you take a look at Sweden, so Sweden was known as the safest country in Europe, one of the safest countries in the world. Now it's known as a very unsafe, well, pretty unsafe country. It's not even.
It's not pretty unsafe. Sweden is a safe country. It has had slightly more violence throughout the last, was it since 2013 or something? But actually, when you look at the stats, they're quite up and down. Probably because it's got a smaller population, or the population is growing there, but you've got a smaller population. So from one year to the next, it can go up and then down and up and then down, literally like that. Metadata analyses of Europe connecting migration to crime has found no effect. In Sweden, some research has shown in certain municipalities there might be a connection between migration and increased crime of certain sorts, but that's not a national thing. That's like a very localized thing. But in terms of the crime, it's a complicated picture, but it's not like Sweden is, you know, a big city in the United States. I mean, you really want to be worrying about your homicide rates in the United States with regard to guns and whatnot than having a pop at Sweden. It's just like again, the pot calling the kettle black. Is absolutely outrageous that he's talking about Sweden's crime stats compared to the United States.
Even believable. It's a whole different country. Sweden.
And Sweden most recently joined NATO. One of the things that the national security strategy says is that the U.S. should work toward ending the perception and preventing the reality of NATO as a perpetually expanding alliance. Are there countries in NATO that you think shouldn't be in the alliance?
Well,
Sweden,
I mean, there
for
are
example?
countries that are difficult for NATO.
Sweden's a really bloody useful country to have in there.
No, not that they shouldn't be. I think it's good to have them. Turkey's an example. Erdogan, he's a friend of mine. Whenever they have a problem with Erdogan, they ask me to call because they can't speak to him. He's a tough cookie. I actually like him a lot. I think actually, you know, look, he's built a strong country, strong military, but they have a hard time dealing with him, and they ask me to call him. And I do call him, and I always work it out with him. You know, he and I work it out really quickly. We had some people that he released that were taken
And then we kiss. It's lovely.
Going through years and years of court cases and everything else. And I said, you know, you got to release him. And he did. He is, you know, very different than a lot of the other leaders. But they have a hard time with him. But, you know, they shouldn't really have a hard time with
Should
him.
NATO stop accepting new members? Should NATO end where it is now?
Well, you know, there aren't that many left when you get right down to it, right? There aren't that many left. It was always, long before Putin, it was an understanding that Ukraine would not be going into NATO. This was long before Putin, in all fairness. And now they pushed, you know, when Zelenskyy first went in and first met Putin, he said, I want two things. I want Crimea back, and we're going to be a member of NATO. He didn't say it in a very nice way either, you know. He's,
of course, you know, Trump very famous for saying nice things to people all the time. He's a nice man, says nice things.
He's a great salesman. I call him P.T. Barnum. You know who P.T. Barnum was, right?
I do.
One of the greatest on earth. He could sell any product at any time. That was his expression. I can sell any product at any time. It was true. He said, doesn't matter whether it works or not.
Don't get distracted here, because what your man here is doing is what detractors of Zelenskyy always do, which is say, open your wallets now, Zelensky's coming to town. And it's this idea that, you know, rather than understanding what Zelenskyy is having to do in order to keep his country alive, but also to keep Europe secure and safe, and NATO secure, safe, and the United States actually more secure and safe. It is just looking at Zelenskyy as this cartoonish character that just goes around cap in hand to everyone, squeezing them for as much as possible. Now, there is an element of him having to do that, right? Like, otherwise, Ukraine just ceases to exist. But this is, I mean, I saw it today with Andrew Bridgen, like a conservative in the UK, just saying exactly that about Zelenskyy. Oh, Zelensky's in Europe. What's he in London? What's he going to be leaving with this time? And blah blah blah. And it's really, I think it's just playing into the playing into the pro-Russian narrative, but he's not sounding like an international leader and a diplomat, a man that is in the most important position in the world. Trump needs to be careful with his words here, and he's anything but. As he has always been, he just says whatever he wants, and he's just a wrecking ball through international diplomacy, and not in a good way.
But he's P.T. Barnum. You know, he got crooked Joe Biden to give him $350 billion.
No, he didn't.
And look what it got.
He didn't.
Got him about 25% of his country is missing.
And it would have been 100% of the country missing had he not had that. Oh, I said I wouldn't get angry. Oh my God, he's just advocating for surrender. He's a surrender monkey. Trump is a surrender monkey.
And in all fairness to Biden, Obama gave away Crimea.
Right, that all happened in 2014.
Obama, because Crimea was the heart. You know, I'm a real estate person at heart, right?
Here's your hotel.
I'm very good at real estate. And when I look, every time I look at that map, I said, oh, this Crimea is so beautiful. Wow. It's surrounded on 4 sides by ocean. It's only got a little piece of land to get to, you know, to the main, I mean, Crimea is massive, but it connects the part of Ukraine that we talk about now through a small little jetty.
It's not a jetty. Well, what are you talking about? It's a peninsula.
It's 4 sides of ocean in the warmest part. It's got the best weather, best everything. And I know you are Ukrainian, and you know Ukraine very well. And Obama forced them to give up Crimea.
Surprised she hasn't taken a shoe off and put a stiletto through his eye.
That was I remember when it happened, but I wasn't involved like I am now. You know, to the knowledge that I have now, I have great knowledge of Ukraine now. I have great knowledge of
really this conflict.
You do not have great knowledge of Ukraine. You literally do not have great knowledge of Ukraine. Other than Crimea is joined to the bit that we normally talk about by a jetty.
Conflict began back in 2014. People forget, long before the invasion of a few years ago.
Well, you know when this conflict really began, though? It was simmering for years, but when Obama gave up Crimea, that was a big thing.
I do want to ask...
do you agree with that? That was a big piece to give up. You are of Ukrainian descent.
That was a major, I remember, you know, when I first moved to the United States, a lot of people didn't know what Ukraine even was. And it was in 2014 that people suddenly started to
Great deflection there from Burns.
Realize how significant geopolitically that area really is.
I just say, from the standpoint of beauty, weather, everything, Crimea is the warmest. It's just got such great potential. And Obama forced them. Obama did this. This is not Biden. Well, maybe he was involved, but I doubt it. He probably didn't know too much then either. He was never the brightest.
And there is an element of truth to what he says. But again, it's neglecting Russia's role in any of this. Of course, just like there's no mention ever of Russia annexing Crimea.
But, you know, Obama gave away, he made them give it away.
Well, I do think your approach to Europe is so different than any of your predecessors. And
I just want to see a strong Europe.
And this national security strategy, I mean, says a lot about the changes that you want.
But you have to understand, here's my approach to Europe. I want to see a strong Europe. When they allow millions of people to pour into their countries, many of these people are committing tremendous crimes. And again, look at Sweden. I'm not knocking Sweden. I love
Where's the data for that? I just want to make sure there is data for that.
Sweden, I love the people of Sweden. But they go from a crime-free country to a country that has a lot of crime now.
It doesn't have a lot of crime, and it wasn't crime-free.
Look at Germany. Germany was crime-free.
No, it wasn't. Jesus wept.
And Angela made 2 big mistakes. Immigration and energy. but those two are beauties.
Well, one country that is pleased with the change in strategy from the United States is Russia. A Kremlin spokesperson called the strategy document a, quote, positive step, and said the adjustments they're seeing are, quote, largely consistent with Moscow's vision. Do you think that's a good thing?
Well, I think he'd like to see a weak Europe. And so, to be honest with you,
so would you.
He's getting that. That has nothing to do with me.
But he thinks the changes that you're making and what you laid out in your vision for Europe is what Moscow wants to see.
I have no vision for Europe. All I want to see is a strong Europe. Look, I have a vision for the United States.
Literally, you set out a vision in that of differing degrees, of sorts in the national security strategy. But I guess you haven't read it. I guess that is Stephen Miller talking about how the patriotic parties of Europe rising up is giving you great hope and optimism. Like that is a vision of what Europe should be, a white ethno-state. But yeah, you say you don't have a vision, so that's weird.
States, America first. It's make America great again. I do explain to Europe because I think, I'm supposed to be a very smart person. I have eyes.
Well done.
I have ears.
Ooh,
I have
good.
knowledge. I have vast knowledge. I see what's happening. I get reports that you will never see.
Yeah, you don't listen to them.
And I think it's horrible what's happening to Europe. I think it's endangering Europe as we know it. Europe could be a whole different place.
He is basically being Stephen Miller here. Like, you just got to understand that virtually everything he receives comes via Stephen Miller these days. I'm 100% sure of this. Many people are saying this at the moment. It is his views are Stephen Miller's views.
Your impact,
and I think the European people should do something about it.
Your impact does stretch far beyond Europe. I want to talk about another area where.
Okay, so she goes on to talk about Venezuela. So that's probably enough from me. But I worry. I worry because Donald Trump, like I say, is a mouthpiece for the thinking of ideologues like Stephen Miller. And I think that is incredibly dangerous because not only is Stephen Miller a dangerous human being, but it makes the United States arguably a very dangerous entity in global geopolitics. And at the moment, that kind of approach is, as Dasha Burns rightly said there, is favoring Russia. At least they see it themselves as favoring Russia. And we are getting a global realignment taking place where Europe looks like they're on their own. Well, you've got Canada, Europe, Japan, Australia, New Zealand, maybe a few other nations thrown in for good measure, bit of Mexico, who knows? But these are worrying times, and Donald Trump has become super adversarial. Is this evidence that Donald Trump is the enemy of Ukraine? I would argue that it's certainly in alignment with that view. We have seen a huge pivot in the last few weeks, and it's not good news for Ukraine, not at all. Anyway, that's enough from me. Thank you for watching. Take care. I'll speak to you soon.